Jessica Moore, and today we're going to be talking about the statement that there is no such thing as a natural disaster. But first, I'm going to give you the definition of a natural disaster, which is an event or process that destroys life and or property. Now, the no such thing as a natural disaster idea stems from the idea that natural disasters are man made and something that can be avoided. And there's even an article that states that if a hurricane or tornado were to hit an unpopulated area, is something that we would just call weather. But when it hits people, that's when we call it a disaster. And there's two authors that stand behind the no such thing as a natural disaster statement, and they go by the name of Neil Smith and Kendra Pierre Lewis. Neil Smith believes that there's no such thing as a natural disaster because he believes that they can be better prevented if prepared for with help of the government. He talks about the Bush administration and how they cut the New Orleans Corps of Engineers budget by 80%, which ended up decreasing their funds that were going to go towards improving the levees, which we know was a big factor in when Hurricane Katrina hit and the flooding that it led to. And he also believes that who lives and who dies is based on a social calculus. So if you're wealthy, you can afford to put your house in an area that's less susceptible to flooding and other dangerous weather phenomenons. But those that are minority and poor and the working class don't really have that luxury because they can't afford it. And Kendra Pierre Lewis says that hazards are natural, but disasters are man made, and says that because buildings and houses are often built in at risk zones, we can't really call it a natural disaster because we're the ones putting people in those vulnerable spots. And she uses Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Harvey as an example, and even says that Hurricane Sandy hit an area where they were a magnet for hurricanes. So I chose the disaster Hurricane Maria. Hurricane Maria was the 8th hurricane of 2017 and made landfall as a Category 5, but really hit Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands as a Category 4, a strong Category 4 in September of 2017 with maximum sustained winds at 155 miles per hour, caused serious flooding that led to so many damages, and around 3,000 fatalities were reported. In this image, you can see like trees and power lines all slanted, and hundreds of thousands were left without power for several weeks and some several months, just depending on where you are with how fast you recovered. Now, vegetation damage occurred. You can see several buildings and bridges were destroyed, and even poultry farms were damaged. And here in this image, you see on the left this woman that has a lamp, because this is almost a year after the event occurred, and she still doesn't have electricity. And she is in a poorer area, more rural area, and it was harder for them to get out to her. So she dealt with the loss of power for a long time, and she even washing clothes by hand instead of using the washing machine because she couldn't. And then, she's also struggling to take care of children, and she also has a husband that is blind. And so without power, it was just hard to just go about life and live it normally and take care of 3 children. And in this next image, you can see more damages. I guess this was a strip mall, and you can see that it's just completely damaged and just absolutely destroyed. On the right here, trees and a lot of wood all over the place. And in this next image, just the devastation in this area, but people are just, with their families just sitting around. There's nothing else to do. So in my opinion, I believe, by going by the definition, natural disasters technically do exist. And I believe that Pierre and Smith were not wrong because they both presented factual points that need to be studied further. But I believe that natural disasters do exist. But yeah, some areas are going to be better prepared for it because of the social economic status and how people prepare for it. But ultimately, they exist because no matter where anyone lives, there will always be a chance of any disaster striking any random place at any time. So you can't say a natural disaster exists because somebody chose to live in a certain area. And then again, Hurricane Maria proved to me that no matter their social or economic status, a natural disaster can include anyone, because there were reports that the officials and mayors and other people that were more wealthy and lived in a suburban and urban area they got power and electricity and their water turned back on weeks earlier, but they were still affected. So, no matter your economic status or where you live, you're always going to be susceptible to damage. And they didn't have the luxury that some of us have in the United States to just go inland. So, say you're on the coast of Florida, you can't just go to your relatives in, say, Tennessee. They didn't have that luxury. So, yeah, preparation does help, but it's not always the savior of a particular weather event. And no matter where you are, you can still be at risk and damages occur anywhere. So, these are my references, and I hope you enjoyed my talk.